All right, so the official title for this presentation, as you know, is Organizational Change Management. Migrate your users along with your systems. Honestly, this is a pretty tough topic to present, not only just for me, but for many others as well. I'll show you my profile a little bit later. What you'll see is I used to be a developer, then I came through the ranks of developer, administrator, power user, and all through that while I used to be a consultant and then a trainer for many of these types of people. And then now I personally have trained a lot of end users and have advised companies on change management. And honestly, that's pretty difficult to do because you're talking about behavior change, you're talking about user adoption, you're talking about a lot more soft skills and those kinds of things, which are very different from telling somebody to go ahead and click on this button and this is going to happen. That doesn't happen. Now, I've been in this industry, uh, Microsoft, I should say, industry Microsoft focus for a very long time now, more than 20 years. So I do have some experience on that. Before we begin, let me just take care of the logistic here. As I was mentioning before, this is the link you could go to get my presentation. In fact, all the presentations that I do, I put it over there. I present at many different conferences. Whenever I present something, I go ahead and put the slide deck, and if I can, go ahead and put the recording also to this location. So if you want to take that, go for it. My name is Asif Rehmani. I am a Microsoft MVP, and the company that I represent is VisualSP. More about that soon as well. Here's my Twitter ID at Asif Rehmani. So let's begin. Okay. My first thing that I will ask all of you, what the heck is change management, right? Many people ask this question, especially when they begin. I asked that to myself. What is change management? Now, I've been focused on change management, behavior change, and these sorts of things, managing governance for companies and all that stuff for quite some time now. But still, when I freshly think about this in my mind, I have new answers that come to my mind all the time as to exactly what is change management. So first, I'm going to give you the official definition here. This is from prosci.com. Change management is processes, tools, and techniques to manage the people side of change to achieve the required business outcome. Change management incorporates the organization tools that can be utilized to help individuals make successful personal transitions, resulting in the adoption and realization of change. Wow, it's quite a mouthful. There's a lot in there, and all true, very much true. I think these guys got it 100% right. However, it's fairly complex as well, isn't it? There's a lot of stuff happening over here. I look at that as simply when you do change behavior, when you are looking at managing change, you're looking at uh, changing behavior of a culture, of company, of people to drive usually user adoption of some new process, new technology, or existing process, existing technology, some platform, or some outcome that you're trying to achieve. Main thing is you're trying to get people to from A to B. And that's not a simple thing to do. I think all of you would agree with me with that. Before getting into the formal part of this presentation, what I want to do is do a quick experiment. Now, this experiment works really well when I'm facing the crowd and I'm looking at everybody and looking in their eyes and seeing what they're doing. This is going to be a first time that I'm doing this in the webinar. So let's see how this goes, all right? If you don't mind, and I know I cannot see any of you, but let's try this thing. If you could fold your hands together, okay? I'm gonna trust that you are doing this right now. Fold your hands together and look at your hands. Look at what the top thumb is. Is this your right or your left, right? And if you don't mind, let's try this thing. If you could put in the questions panel, if it's your right thumb or your left thumb. Let's see. So I'm seeing right, left, left, left. And I've seen both things where people who are righties, actually sometimes they have their right thumbs, others who are lefties have their, or sometimes who are lefties have their right thumb, and vice versa. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. It's a very simple request, okay? Do it the other way, so the other thumb is on top. Now, if it was right before, put the left one on top, okay? And now here's the final request that I'm gonna make from you. That's it, final request. Please continue doing this all of your life, all right? Very simple request, right? I'm not asking for too much. Just do the other way the rest of your life. Don't do it the way that you've been doing until now. How did that make you feel? I didn't tell you anything about why. I just said, here's a very simple request. I'm not asking too much. Just do it the other way, and that's it. You're going to make me happy. Chances are that 100% of you are going to say, no way. That's not what I'm going to do just because this guy is telling me to do that. There's nothing in it for me. Why would I do that? That starting with why is so super important. It's definitely not rocket science. We all understand, obviously, you have to start with why, but we don't always do it. We know it, but we don't do it. That's a fact. You have to start with why. Why is he asking me to do that? Why should I do that? Now, having said this, I'm going to tell you a quick story of something that happened with me. All right, some of you it might relate to. I've gone through my life with different body composition in myself. You know, sometimes I had a little bit bigger gut and sometimes I had a smaller one. Sometimes I'm much more slimmer, sometimes I'm bigger. Now, when I was bigger in the midsection over here, I came to a realization that I was going to the movies with my wife and kids a lot, which was great. But something that was happening when I go to the movies all the time was I was eating lots and lots of popcorn. Okay, lots of popcorn. Great, no problem. And I thought for some reason that popcorn was healthy. Well, movie popcorn is not really that healthy. We're talking about like 1,000 calories and 40 grams of fat. That's a lot of calories in there, right? So I didn't stop doing it because I needed to still do this thing. I wanted to still eat popcorn with my family and all that, and I had fun doing it, but I made one simple change. Here's what I did. I started eating popcorn with my non-dominant hand. So I'm a righty. I started eating popcorn with my left hand. I kid you not, just by doing that, it made my popcorn consumption a lot less automatically. That's weird, I know, but that's exactly what happened. So having said that, this helped me in my midsection, got me a little bit slimmer just because I was eating a lot less popcorn. I'm thinking about this much more consciously. Anyway, something to think about. You have to change the behavior in such a way that there's an actual effect for that thing. There's got to be something in it for you. My simple change that I did of how I eat popcorn at movies helped me see the results, and because of that, I kept doing so. All right, moving on, because I do have a lot to cover. The main session agenda that I have today is, first of all, understanding the types of change and how to provide a stability plan for that change. Various case studies of companies and how they tackle change. That's super important. We have to, in my opinion, learn from others. We can't just be reinventing the wheel every time. There's some really cool stuff. One of the things that I really like in one of my slides that most people take pictures of when they're at conference is, how do you measure adoption? How do you measure when things are actually changing? So there's a really cool one for that, for what Visa Corporation did actually. We learned from that. Lessons from my experiences. So that's going to be good as well. This is who I am. So lessons from my experiences. Why do you care? Who am I? Why are you learning from me? I've had a history of doing all sorts of things, especially within the Microsoft space. Written some books along the way as well. And I've also been designated as a Microsoft MVP since 2007. So it's about 12 years now. The main thing that I do is I try as much as possible to transfer the knowledge that I have in my head right here to your head. That's what I try to do. And I've done that, as I mentioned before, as a developer, then administrator, then as a power user, and now I do that for change managers, internal communication managers, intranet managers, end users. Okay, here's my contact information. If you need it, feel free to contact me. And as I mentioned, I live in Chicago. The company that I represent is VisualSP. VisualSP is in the business of in-context guidance. Okay, in-context guidance for users. And what that means, because you might be wondering, what does this mean exactly? Just going to quickly show you. This is visualsp.com. This is our company website. And if you go to visualsp.com, you'll see what it's talking about. Currently, we focus on guidance for SharePoint and Office 365 suite in terms of walkthroughs, videos, things like that. We are supporting Dynamics as well now already, and we're going to be supporting more products going forward. That's where we are currently. It's a very, very important in my mind as a trainer also and as a change manager advocate that you have to inform users what they need to do at the moment of need. You have to guide them at the moment of need, and that's exactly what this product does, VisualSP. Let us know if you want more information about that. Alrighty, moving forward. First, I'm going to start with talking about the story of or sharing with you the story of the beautiful intranet with 100% adoption. Yes, it exists. Surprise, surprise. The story of the beautiful intranet with 100% adoption. Let's see how many people recognize this intranet. This is it right here. Beautiful looking, brilliant colors, nice look and feel. All the applications available at your fingertips and 100% user adoption achieved. I can bet you that most of you have heard of this company, even though it does not come into mind right now. Most of you have heard of it. Anybody want to take a guess? Let's see if anybody responds to that. Which company is it? Oh my God, 2 people did get it correct. It is called the Contoso Corporation. Yes, it is a Contoso Corporation. So this is a fictional corporation. Those of you who don't know, that Microsoft created. And obviously, fictional corporations have fictional user adoption rates, which is 100% in this case. The reality is not this. Now, I've been in this business for a very long time, and I could tell you that this is the reality. The reality is most of the time, the intranet gets put on to within the organization, or doesn't matter if it's intranet or some other kind of place, but it becomes storage for documents. People just start dumping documents in there because they're thinking about this as just another Windows Explorer. Honestly, I mean, most of us think in terms of documents, right? So we create a document or you upload the document, and you, instead of doing it in Windows Explorer, now you're dumping into a document library, etc. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality right now. So the big challenge that we have is that many of us are investing our time, our efforts, energy, money, making these huge systems, like a jumbo jet, right? Or this beluga jet, which is not real, by the way, it's a hoax. But anyway, you're making this amazing thing, and then not many people are unfortunately using it. These are amazing systems inside, but they're just empty. What's the point? Where are the passengers? And if there are no passengers, then why are we doing all that stuff? That's our challenge. In fact, and this was a very scary statistic in my opinion, 55% of change initiatives, according to Forbes study, meet initial objectives, and then only 25% sustained over time. That's pretty harsh. 25% of our efforts basically are sustained over time. That's hard to hear. So my advice, first and foremost, because without this next thing, I don't think anything that you do is really going to be helpful, is you have to make sure the executives are on your side. The executives are bought in to what you're trying to accomplish. I'm going to give you a company's name, but I can't tell you the individual. Actually, you know what? I can't even tell you the company's name because that's not fair, I think. So sorry about that. It's just a large retailer, a large electronics retailer. How about that? That's all I can say right now. But they had an intranet manager / Microsoft MVP as well, who was amazing. However, she could not get buy-in from the executives as to where they were moving with their intranet initiative. Just could not. She was there for many years. I think it was more than 10 years actually. And eventually just could not get that, and she had to actually leave. If the top level of the organization is not with you in your initiatives, no matter if everybody else is with you, change doesn't happen. That's just a reality. And I've seen that many places, not just at that retailer. Sorry, I can't mention the retailer. I don't want to get in trouble. If they're not in on your side, you have to show them the data, right? Which data? Well, there's a lot of data out there about exactly what happens when you don't plan for user adoption, you don't plan for change management. There's some study that we have done also. This study is specific to a SharePoint challenge. So which SharePoint challenge are you trying to solve? Now, obviously, this doesn't just apply to specifically SharePoint. It applies to any intranet, anything out there. But we had 376 organizations that we surveyed, and here's what we found. Increasing adoption was by far the number one thing. Governance, regulation, policy communication was number two, and so forth. So hopefully this helps as well. There's a link for it to grab it, and I'm sure you can get a lot of other data out there. So the reality is you cannot really force users to change their behavior, right? Unless you take extreme measures, which I definitely don't recommend doing, you really cannot get people to change their behavior. You have to start with the major number one thing, which is WIIFM. There's this radio WIIFM, which is always playing in everybody's mind, no exceptions. The radio WIIFM stands for, what's in it for me? Why should I care? Why am I doing this thing? Why should I do something that you're telling me to do? That's just the reality. That's what's going to happen all the time. And if you don't make that clear, crystal clear, then you just cannot get the type of change that you're looking for. There's already lots of conversations happening, lots of things happening in the organization. You have to become a part of those conversations, a part of that movement, part of that chaos sometimes, without pushing everybody in your way. And you also have to give before receiving. There's going to be examples of all that stuff coming up soon as well. Think about when you get, for example, solicitors that come to your door. You know, I've had some really amazing deals that people have talked about that have come to my door, talking about electricity change, provider change, talking about telecom provider change, telecom, all that, you know, lawnmower change, all that kind of stuff. But honestly, if it's not at the right time, I am not interested. Doesn't matter how good the deal is. I'm just not interested. You're coming and you're disturbing my peace and telling me your agenda of what's in it for you. You got to tell me what's in it for me at the time I want it. The timing is super important, right? Timing is everything, to be honest. So I say many times, those of you who know me, that content of your message is important, but the context and the timing is even more important, in my opinion. Think about it this way. You could be putting out lots of messages out there, you know, from newsletters or announcing things on stage to people or things like that at events within your company. However, what are your change recipients thinking? Is it like this? You know, where you're spending all this energy and you may or may not be able to see your recipients, but some might just be distracted on all sorts of things. They have their own conversations going. They have their own agenda going. All kinds of stuff already happening. You have to get their attention, just like I'm trying to get your attention right now. And I'm sure some of you are probably multitasking right now. Like, I got to check email. I have to do all that stuff. And I'm listening to this webinar as well. And that's okay. I don't blame you for that. But you have to make it crystal clear what's in it for them to pay attention to you. And to do that, you have to give them something that they're already thinking about first, before you can ask them for something that you are thinking about. That's just the reality. I want to tell you another story over here. And some of these stories I feel make a pretty big impact, more than what I can tell you just about certain other things, other factoids, because these stories tell you exactly what has happened for successes and failures that hopefully can help you in your own life and your own initiatives. So this is a story of a secretary in Tennessee. Those of you who have attended my sessions before at conferences probably heard of this right already, so I apologize. But those of you who have not, this is going to be all new to you. And I'm going to try to make this annotated so you can actually see everything as well instead of just hear me say it. All right. So in Tennessee, my team and I actually, this was a long time ago, I think about 10 years ago, we went to do some consulting at a company. Now, this company in Tennessee, which I cannot name, had 2 buildings, okay? And this company, which had 2 buildings, this organization actually was funded by DOD. Okay, so they're pretty, Department of Defense is the one who was behind it in terms of funding. They had 2 buildings like this. I'm going to call this building 1, building 2, separated by like half a block, because you had to actually walk if you wanted to get there. Building 1 had the PMs in there, had the secretaries in there. I'll just say secretary, here we go, secretaries in there, and had other people like that who actually did the work, had the developers in there. I should put that down too, developers. Building 2 had the executives team in there, the executives, and they had some other people there as well, but the executives branch was the major one that was represented in building 2. Okay, what happened here was the people in building 2, the executives had actually hired us to say, well, we already have licenses for Microsoft. Specifically, we have licenses for specifically SharePoint, licenses for all sorts of actually Microsoft licenses. I can't remember exactly all the stuff they had, but they were not utilizing it, and they wanted to utilize it better. So they hired us for doing that. In here, in building 1, we went in here first, and the first thing we saw was a secretary in there, and her job was very specific, especially for the morning part of it. She would run a report every day based in Excel. I think this was Excel 2007. Run a report, analyze the report, put some graphs and data and tables and stuff together, print out that report from an actual printer, which I have horrible drawing skills, so I can't print it out, but it was like right behind her desk. She would print out that that report, and then she would walk from here to building 2 to share the report with the executive team, answer their questions, and then after that she would come back. Okay, so this was happening every day. This was the first part of her day every day. So obviously we saw this thing as an opportunity. We said, all right, well, we can make this super simple. At that time, Excel services was an option. So we said we can use Excel services and reporting services, alert services. We can make all this stuff super simple, super quick. There is no human intervention required. We can just have this run automatically. Reports get generated, dashboards get generated, alerts get sent out to the right people. They could put notes in there, all that stuff as well, and life is good, right? So we went with that proposal to the secretary, and we asked her, we said, here's what we're going to do. Do you have any questions? Her question was, why? Why do you want to make this change, right? She didn't want this change. And the reason she didn't want the change, we surmised, was job security. She thought, well, this is going to take away half of my day every day, which was understood. But on top of that, she didn't see as to the reasoning for making this change. If everything was working right, there was nothing broken, right? So then we went to the executive team and we wanted to talk to them, the execs over here. All right, guys, here's what we have. Here's, of course, the perception right now from the secretary that she doesn't want to do it, and here's why she doesn't want to do it. We can give her the whole report, give them the whole report over there. And then, of course, we waited for the answer, and the answer had to be yes, obviously, right? The cost is not that much that we're asking for, and you already have the license for everything. So it just made a simple sense for them to say yes, to move on forward with this. But it surprised us when they actually said no, right? They said that, listen, guys, there's a lot more to the to what you're seeing over here. It's not just what you're seeing in terms of technological changes, but there's more things that you're not seeing here. Let us describe to you what you're not seeing, and you tell us if you could do this thing. So when she comes every day to building 2, she brings a report, she brings an analysis. We can ask her any questions in real time, face to face, as to here's what's going on. She's extremely popular in that building 1. She knows exactly what things are going on in terms of data. But not just that, but when she comes from building 1 to building 2, she actually brings with her all the information about what's happening in building 1 in terms of the morale of people in the building 1, the water cooler conversations that are happening in building 1. We don't see these kind of things when we go to building 1, and that's super important to us. That's what the job gets done. We want to be able to see that. Can you replace all that stuff with your technology? The answer was no, we can't. So because of this, this was not really a pain point. This is something that if we had actually gone ahead and made this system, nobody would have used it because there was no real need for it. This was not a pain point. This was a change that was not required. There was no WIIFM for either of the parties, even though it seemed like a regular logical solution. I share this story so you can keep this in mind as you're making your own change initiatives and solving pain points, because sometimes they just seem like a pain point, but it's not. Moving forward, what are the different types of changes? Let's talk about that. We have, of course, a minor change. Think about that. The minor changes are, you can make those usually automatic and change. So for example, change in procurement, asset tracking, sales procedures. You can, like I said, the solution to many of these things are make a quick automatic solution or a quick behavior change that doesn't really hurt anybody. You can make that happen. Major change, moving offices, changing critical systems like email, collaboration tools, and things like that. That's hard to do. And people do require more, there's more resistance. They require a lot more nudge to make that happen. Then there's substantial change. Right? Substantial change, what is that? Completely changing your model altogether of doing business, like Kodak did, or IBM, Kmart, AOL. These were all huge names at one point, right? However, market changed, their reality changed, their business model had to change, and they had to do what they had to do to survive. It's very, very different. Depending on the change that you're making, depending on that change, it has to be very, well, you have, of course, different effort that's involved, depending on the change that you have to make. So keep that in mind, and keep also in mind that you can always provide a stability plan when a change has to be made. What do I mean by stability plan? This is something that not many people are familiar with so far. A stability plan is where you're keeping something the same, where everything around that particular anchor changes. Things that are not changing also need to be specified, not just things that are changing. Things that are not changing are called an anchor. So imagine this. Another quick story over here. This is just a case scenario. Let's say, actually, this is it's very personal in nature. Let's talk about that. When you're moving, those of you who have kids out there, if you're moving from one house to another, think about this. You're moving from one house to another. Let's say it's in the same neighborhood. You're just moving to a different house. But now the schools for your kids remain the same. The family remains the same, obviously. The city remains the same. It's a minor change. It's not a big deal. If you did move from one place to another, but it happens to be in a different neighborhood altogether, or maybe it's in a different city altogether, now it's a big change. State has changed, maybe city has changed, maybe school has definitely changed. But what's the same? Still, the culture of the country is the same. The family is the same, right? That's a pretty major change, though, for kids especially. Now think about a substantial change for kids. What if you have moved completely to a different country, right? When you move to a different country altogether, the culture has changed, the schools have changed, the language has changed, so much has changed. But what is their stability anchor? The family. You remain the same. So the family remains the same. And that's the stability anchor that they have to latch onto for them to feel good and for them to feel stable and for them to feel anchored. Same thing, and I'm not saying our end users are kids, but sometimes you have to actually draw that parallel, that you have to keep things some things the same, and then you have to specify what is the same before you start making changes all around them. Otherwise, just like all of us would, and our kids would, and others would retaliate, and users would retaliate as well. You're changing everything around me. What's the reason? What's in it for me? WIIFM, super important. Always remember that. Okay, let's move on to the next part of the presentation, which is going to be the use case studies. So first, I'm going to be talking about a little known corporation out there called Sony. Anybody heard of it? All right. Obviously, all of us know Sony and all the awesome things that they've done. The question that they had to answer is, how do we train our users to go to our new intranet? This is quite a while back. They were making a change from one intranet to another intranet, and they wanted to make sure that the users also embrace the change, embrace the new intranet. But they were really aware of the pitfalls that are out there. So first thing they ruled out right away, which is traditional training, because traditional training doesn't work. I don't know how many of you agree with me out there. I've actually done traditional training for end users, and honestly, I've never been able to succeed doing that. I've done training for all different variety of people, as I mentioned before, developers, administrators, power users, and all kinds of folks, but not for end users. It just never truly works. And in my opinion, the real reason for that is end users don't want to be trained. End users want to get their job done. They want to get their tasks and their job done, and they want to move on to other things. They don't want to get trained. If you do have people who want to get trained, they're usually power users. They're not end users. So what Sony did was they used a pain point that users already had to their advantage. The pain point was that they had a mobile workforce who frequently needed to print documents. All right, but the problem was that it was hard to find and connect to the printer closest to them. So they're in San Diego. If they go from one building to another or one city to another, different places, it was, how do you find where I print the document? Obviously, those of you who are technical enough know that you can actually connect to a printer. But even those of us who do that sometimes run into problems of IP connection, and I can't find the printer and specify this, specify that, specify the port and all that, so much. So what Sony did was ingenious, in my opinion. They actually got a product, external product altogether, non-Microsoft in this case, and that product let them allow people to find a single click, or to have a single click method to print to the nearest printer. That's it. It would just one click and it would print to the nearest printer. It would tell you exactly the location in the office. It would do everything for you. However, here's what they did. They went ahead and put that functionality, in their new intranet right here. Okay, so now the nearest printer functionality is a web part within an intranet, and it just pushed up to the top right of the page, right below the menu. And you have to come to the home page of the site to see this functionality. And guess what? Everybody did, because they all had that need. While they're there, looking at the nearest printer web part, guess what also they saw? The CEO's weekly message. Now, CEO of a pretty big corporation in this case, Sony, you're getting a message from that person on a weekly basis. It's changing. Wouldn't you want to know that message? Obviously, I would. I think everybody else would as well. So they came for something that they wanted, and then they stayed for something that intrigued them, that you wanted to have them get. So now they're already coming to the intranet, they're coming there often, and now they're discovering other things on the page. What is that? What is this? What is this? And all different kinds of elements on the page, because they were intriguing as well. And user adoption increased. The change, which was coming from the old intranet to this new intranet, became a lot lower of a burden for people to adopt, because there was something in it for them. I think it was a pretty awesome concept that they used. And the concept in my mind for doing all that stuff is the JIT concept, the just-in-time concept. The just-in-time concept is not new. It's been used forever, I feel, especially in the automotive industry, where instead of having all this inventory and all these huge warehouses and all, they started doing this thing much more ad hoc in nature. When the need is there, then you go ahead and procure the right materials to make it. So manufacturing companies like Ford, Toyota, all of them and more made this concept a reality in many of these organizations. And obviously, it's been used a lot more industries afterwards. Well, just like that, just-in-time help can also be provided. Think about that. You can provide just-in-time help to people to help them change as needed. A good friend of mine, Susan Hanley, let me borrow this slide. So I'm going to go ahead and present this one. Just in time and just enough help. You don't want your users to follow any advice blindly on the internet, do you? I really hope not. Just because everybody else is doing it, or I found this on YouTube, I want to go ahead and do it. No. You don't want that to happen. That's not right. Now, when users do need help on the intranet or on your any system for that matter, they're going to be not as motivated to be looking all around. They might Google it or Bing it and stuff, but if they don't find the answer right away, they're going to ask somebody, or they're just going to skip that task and go to the next task and come back to it later. A lot of productivity time loss, unfortunately. And you don't want to overwhelm them with too much information either. Some people say, well, we're going to make a site of information. We're going to provide videos. We're going to provide documents. We're going to provide all this stuff. And I kid you not, I've seen that, if not dozens, then at least more than 100 times. Different companies I'm talking about over the years where they've done this, and not a single one has been successful, unfortunately. Not that the information is not good. Please don't get me wrong. The information is great that many of them put out there. However, the challenge is, how do you get people there and to the specific information that they need? That's very difficult to do. Okay, just in time and just enough help is a necessity, not too much. What we did also as a company, we have done a couple of different things I'm going to show you. We made these annotated screenshots, especially for classic interfaces and modern interfaces of SharePoint in this case. And then we did it for OneDrive. We did it for lots of other things as well. And we made them available, the quick reference tip sheets on this URL. So if you click on it, which actually I'll go ahead and do that right now, you'll see all these different links which go directly to a quick reference screenshot. So SharePoint Online Document Library, here we go. So something like this could be easily printed out, and that's a good way to give them help right there on their desk. That's a possibility. So they have that right away. That's one I would mention. That's a good way of doing it. A better way is what, once again, for Susan Hanley taught me this thing. So Susan Hanley, those of you who don't know, she's a governance expert in the Microsoft industry, Microsoft space. And what she taught me many years back is, also, if you want to go ahead and give users the information right there, right beside where they're looking. So in this particular case, this happens to be a library, right? Within a document library, you have the recommendations, you have best practices right there on the page, just in time and just in context delivery of information. They click on it and they know exactly what they're supposed to do in terms of file name recommendations and also best practices for citing metadata. So I think that's great. That's definitely a better way of doing it than just giving them a sheet of paper, a sheet of a screenshot, but both of them are good. Now, in my opinion, there's an even better way of doing it. And the better way, or the best way, in my opinion, is showing it directly in context to the user wherever they are, not just document library, but wherever they are. So in this case, a document library comes up and automatically file name and recommendations come up the first time you visit the library. And you can look at the recommendations and see in there, for example, that, oh, I can't use front slashes, I can't use version 1, version 2, things like that. It's all right there on the page, can come up automatically, or you can bring it up as a user by clicking on an item over here as well. And this is actually a demo of how VisualSP does it. So that's how our company does it. If you want to check it out at visualsp.com. Of course, we're not the only ones who do it this way. There's other companies out there as well. So make your decision as to whatever you think is the best. But this mode of delivery of showing them in a modal dialogue, an alert, an announcement, or policies, that mode of delivery is the best delivery in my opinion, better than the others. Now let me move on to the next case study here. And this case study is about Visa Corporation, one other small corporation I'm sure that you have heard of. Their challenge was low user adoption of the intranet. The current intranet at the time had 2 SharePoint on-premises farms, had 350 site collections, 100 unique site owners, and low enthusiasm and low adoption for their intranet. This is back in 2012. Okay. We actually have a complete case study that you can click on and see. You'll see a lot more information on the site. I'm not going to go through all the information here, obviously, but we'll be going through some of the stuff here. Oops. 1 second, here we go. All right, so let's talk about what Visa did. They did 4 specific things, very, very specific things to raise the adoption, and they did succeed, by the way, at that time. Number 1, simple governance policies delivered. Number 2, simple adoption metrics. Number 3, simple solutions altogether. And number 4, user support that actually helps. Does not just pretend to help, but it actually helps. So number 1, simple governance policies. What does that mean? Every imposed limitation should have a compelling reason. So if I'm limiting people from doing something, if I'm limiting them, there has to be a very compelling reason for that. It cannot just be because I say so. That doesn't fly anymore. That was one of the things that they put out there as one of the policies that they put for their people. So for example, for every prohibited tool or process, an alternative should be provided. You can't say, and I'm going to go ahead and name a tool, for example. You can't go out and say, don't use Google Drive or don't use Dropbox and use OneDrive. There has to be, first of all, a reason. And then there has to be an actual alternative as to you have to provide them the other tool. All right, that we're going to take this away, we're going to give you this, and here's the reason for that, and here's what it does for you, maybe more space, one click less to make it happen, or something like that. Okay, better security. You have to talk about why. You can't just say that we have always done it this way and we're going to do it this way. That cannot be a rule either, is what they said. So if you are going to make a change, great, make a change, but the we've always done it this way cannot justify as a rule for neither the company nor the employees to stick to something that is not good for the company. Okay. And also every rule should be clear enough to be fully understood by everyone. So these governance policies and all cannot be truly overarching kind of governance policies which are hard to understand. It's got to be very clear, very simple. The simpler the words, the better. Moving onwards, this is the slide which I think is going to make it worth you coming to this webinar. I kid you not. This is something that many people have asked me for. So once I'm done, if you want to take a screenshot, or of course you can take the whole slide deck as well, as I've said before. Simple adoption metrics. How do you measure adoption? Now, of course, I'm going to be talking about very specific to SharePoint adoption in this case. Having said that, even outside of SharePoint, if you look at general intranet, some of these things do transfer over to that as well. How many current site collections and unique site owners do we have? Okay, how many current site collections and unique site owners do we have? How many new site requests are we getting per month? How many custom objects do we have and the rate of their increase? Custom objects such as list forms, form libraries, custom workflows, features activation, customized pages. Okay, custom objects mean that there's actual engagement by people to make an effort to make a custom object, right? That does count for user adoption. What type of support tickets are we getting? Complaints of broken things or looking for guidance? This is pretty important also, where people say, well, our support tickets are going down, that means adoption must be going up. That's not always the case. Support tickets might be going down for the right reason, but they might be going down for the wrong reason. And the wrong reason is that people are just not engaged. They don't care. You don't want that to be the case, do you? You definitely don't want that. You want people to care. And sometimes that means the support tickets will go up when they say, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then of course it will go down again once they get used to it, but meanwhile it will go up. So these were the different things that they looked for adoption metrics, and I think they were pretty useful. So hopefully that's useful to you as well. Next thing, simple solutions. What does that mean? Prioritizing solutions to highest visible challenges. I like to call them pain points. A highest visible challenge or a highest visible pain point is something that you want to conquer. So they had a challenge, for example, for people requesting a new site. Users had to go to an IT ticketing system, find the right form, fill out all these blanks that they didn't understand to get a new site. So obviously many people didn't ask for a site. So they made a change, and the change was a simple site request form in SharePoint. Now, of course, we're talking about SharePoint here, but it could be any intranet or any system. making things simpler, making a simpler form in this case. Added automation to streamline the process also, so it happens quickly and it's all discoverable easily as well. So looking for simple solutions and simple things to solve, which of course the problem could be big, but the solution could be simple, elegant, and just works. Very important. Last but not least, providing user training or user support that actually helps the users. Formal training retention really is about 10%. Informal training, you definitely get higher, and that's 20%. But when you experience something, that retention is much, much higher. I think all of you would agree with me on that, right? Users wanted the hands-on assistance, and they wanted to get into places where they really needed to do something to help them do it. And they usually ask people, can you show me how to do this? Can you show me? And then people would, at Visa in this case, would go over their shoulder and say, okay, click on this, click on that, and then make it happen. So they wanted to replicate that process. So what Visa did was they implemented a contextual help system to provide users help at the moment of need. And they did that in form of short videos, printable quick reference sheets, and things like that. Now, they utilize our system at VisualSP in this case, but obviously any contextual help system or any contextual guidance system for that matter would be the right way to go. They provided struggling users an easy way to open support tickets. So now this is something that some companies shy towards, saying, well, we don't want people to be opening support tickets all the time. Trust me, you do want them to do that, because otherwise they are actually not adopting and not really caring about the initiatives that you put out there. If there's a problem, you want them to look for a solution, not ignore the problem. That's in my humble opinion. But we saw that, and that helped quite a bit at Visa Corporation. My third case study is of a large enterprise payment processor. Can't name this particular company. Don't have the permission to do so, but here's the dilemma they had. They were migrating to a new system. They needed users to not feel disconnected. They wanted people to know that others are out there who can help them and how they can solve their own problems if they needed to. So they wanted to inform and help users at their moment of need, right? What they ended up doing in terms of solution, which I'm going to show you screenshots of this one. So you're going to see screenshots. I had to redact some of the information to not have the company information. But right after this slide, I'm going to show you the screenshots of exactly the solution that they implemented. Within the solution, they did two things. First, provided the users easy access to understand who their site collection administrators are. So when they had a question, they knew exactly who to call or who to email. Next thing they did was they provided users the ability to get solutions to problems at the moment of need. So if I have a problem, in the same interface where I'm looking at, I should be able to click a button, explore where the solution is if it's already been identified. If not, I should be able to make a support ticket. So similar to what Visa did as well. Theirs looks differently though, but a very similar thing, similar results. They had a lot of success with that. They're still using that as well. So number one, when people are at a site and they're confused and they want to talk to somebody, that someone should be accessible. Now, of course, that's going to depend on the company culture, if you want to make this information available or not. But whenever this information is made available, people do tend to feel a lot more supported. They may or may not use it. They may or may not actually call or email the person, but they still feel that I'm not alone. There's someone out there who I can call upon, and that helps quite a bit. So in this case, there's a button, which actually there's on the screenshot that's coming later, which shows that button. They can click on that button directly in the ribbon, and out come this dialog box showing them exactly the name, the email, the work phone of the person who can support them, who is a site collection administrator. Next solution that they made. Got a problem? Solution provided in context. So here's what they did specifically. Now, of course, we're talking about SharePoint here, so I'm going to show you the SharePoint specific thing, but once again, this can go with any system. So within the tab right here, they had things like got a problem right here, got a question right there, site collection administrators right there. So when you click on certain buttons, you would get the solution right there. You get the interface right there to help you with that. So in this particular case, this is the got a problem one. So it's this one. They click on got a problem. They got this dialog box saying, okay, how can we help? And then you had this drop down that you can click on to get solutions. One of the main things that they get all the time, one of the main questions for all the time, and this happens actually in many companies, is access permission issue. I'm trying to get to this site, I'm trying to get to this list or library or something, and I can't get to it. That access permission issue they put on top of the list. And then they had specific wording. If you chose that as a user, they had specific wording explaining to you what you can do if you have an access or permission issue. In this case, it's saying go to the help tab again, which is this one, and go ahead and contact your site collection administrator. That's what they want people to do. Okay. But now they also give them a way to, for users to say, okay, well, I'm satisfied with this answer, or I'm not satisfied. If you're satisfied, great. If you're not satisfied, you click on no, and here's what will happen. Uh-oh, let's get a little bit more information. So then you have a text box, and you have a rich, a bigger text box down there, and you can describe your issue, and you click on save. And immediately, if you click on save after describing this issue, a support ticket will get created on your behalf right there. Worked wonderful. Being able to get this information out to the right people so they can get help. And it's right there, it's in your face. When you're looking at a library, you're looking at a list, you're looking at a page, you're looking at a customized system, whatever it is that you're looking at on your intranet, in this case, you have these buttons always there within a tab. It's right there, right? So that helps a lot with people. All right. One more thing that this company did was they went ahead and deployed resources of things that people needed dynamically appearing right onto the page. So right there, SharePoint help resources in this case is right there. And what that does, and this would change also dynamically, is depending on where they are, the person is on which page, and sometimes depending on their permission on that page, it would show them the proper links to the resources that are relevant to them. Pretty good stuff. Once again, could be used in any system, not just this one, but all that stuff helps users to feel comfortable, to be okay with the changes when you're making those changes. You have to support them. User support at the right time is super, super important. All right. Now, I don't know how many of you folks are familiar with this thing. If you're not, I'm going to go ahead and give you an exact graph to show you what I'm talking about here. Using the elastic band effect to avoid change fatigue. Change fatigue is very real. I think it's real for all of us. When things change all around us, and especially if we cannot control those changes, we get frustrated, right? It could be good changes happening, but still, sometimes if it's not in our control, the frustration develops. So you use the elastic band effect to avoid change fatigue. Here's what I mean by that. Let me clear up the screen. All right, I'm gonna draw a graph for you. What we want to do in terms of changes is this. Let's go ahead and make all these changes, right? No. Let's think about this again. That's not what you want to do, because that's exactly how change fatigue sets in. Let me remove that here. In my humble opinion, and from what I've seen in many places, it's best to make changes gradually and then to stabilize things and give it a period where this elastic band, this rubber band that you have stretched, gets time to get some slack. People get adopted with new activities, new things that they're doing. They understand why they're doing it. They get benefit out of it. And sometimes, actually the adoption does start going down after this thing, but that's still part of it. You should be okay with that. Then you give another stretch to your rubber band over here, another initiative or something. Once again, explaining why it's important to them, why the change is important, what's going to help with them. And then once again, things will stabilize. Sorry for my bad drawing here. But once again, things will stabilize. Then once again, you give it a boost. So what you're seeing over here, there's acceleration, but then there's also valleys that will happen of things that are going down a little bit. But this avoids the change fatigue. You still get to a destination, but you're doing it in a way where you're stretching the rubber band, stretching the elastic band, and letting it get some slack, and then stretching it more, and then stretching it more to get to how stretched out the rubber band do you want it to be. In this case, of course, getting users the change to be adopted how you want it to be. If you do it too quickly, change fatigue will set in, and the rubber band, the elastic band will snap. People will retaliate and they will go back to where you started from and start using the systems which you don't want them to use, or other things like that. So please, that's just my humble opinion. That I've seen that happen. Be careful with that. Lastly, people ask all the time, well, do you have any specific activities and a specific timeline of doing things? There's a user adoption activities timeline that we put together in terms of just a blog. So you can click on this and you can get to a blog entry and see what should you be doing in terms of user adoption and change communication, let's say 2 months before, a month before, a week before, and then on the day of the actual change, a week after, 2 months after. Of course, that's our interpretation of what you should be doing. If you have any feedback, I would love to hear some feedback as to what has worked for you, and we'll incorporate this in this article as well. All right, well, I hope all this has been helpful to you. You can grab the slide directly from, I'll put that link up here as well, download my presentation here. This recording, I'm gonna see if I can get that posted up there as well. So you have the recording of that later. Regardless, you should get an email from our admin within about a day to the recording, the link to the recording. So that should be helpful. You can learn more about VisualSP and how it provides interactive guidance to end users at visualsp.com. I just show you a small snippet here and there, but there's lots of use cases on the website as well. So you can check that out if you found what you saw intriguing. Feel free to connect with me online. Asif Rehmani is my Twitter, and asif@visualsp.com is my email address. Love to hear from you. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I think we're right on time. I hope that see you guys next time as well. Good luck and take care.